Welcome to the Build Better Blueprint, the podcast where we discuss the foundations of real estate, entrepreneurship, and personal growth. Join Christian Cardamone as he shares insights, strategies, and stories that will empower you to level up your business, your lifestyle, and your impact. Let's build a better blueprint for success, starting now.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. This is Christian Cardamone, and you're listening to the Build Better Blueprint. Today, I've got a special treat for you. Darren Christensen, owner of Mod. I'm going to read you a little bit about his bio to get started. Darren started in real estate as an investor, rehabbing and flipping homes in 2007. He quickly identified all failure points in homes as he fixed them and built them back better. In 2011, Darren hit a breaking point when his 4-year-old home was falling apart. This was a mid-tier home built by a big-name national builder. Determined that there had to be a better way, Darren started ground-up construction of homes and became fascinated with the building science and the practices that make for exceptionally long-lived, healthy, and comfortable homes. When he found the limits of what he could do himself, he started to develop using prefab homes. Darren has always had a penchant for efficiency and found that even in the prefab industry, there were significant obstacles. Again, thinking that there had to be a better way, he came to the conclusion that most of the obstacles could be solved by building smaller. Not only that, but he could help so many people in the process. And Mod was born. Darren loves to see people succeed, and his first advice is to just get started. Whether it's a space that allows you to cut expenses, earn additional income, or gives you the space that you need to accomplish your heart's desire. So Darren, thanks for joining us today, man. How the heck are you?
Living the dream, baby. Living the dream, Christian. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. It looks like you've got like the wood background. Are you in one of the Mod homes right now, actually?
I am in one of our units on the factory floor, and we just hastily made a little podcast studio here. I've got insulation behind me as a sound absorber.
Nice. Awesome, man. Well, so awesome. So I want to introduce you to our audience and see if you can tell us a little bit about yourself, where you live, some of the hobbies that you have, and how your journey started getting into the greatest industry on earth. And it sounds like you've got real estate and construction kind of joined in the middle, and excited to hear about your start into this journey.
Yeah, man. So I'm Darren Christensen. I live just outside of Austin, Texas, in the Hill Country. It's beautiful out here. I am the owner of Mods. We are a prefab manufacturer of modular structures, primarily aimed for hospitality, workforce housing, affordable housing, that sort of thing. Got a passion for making a real difference in the wide open sector of affordable housing, because there's just a lot that's out there that's greenwashed and labeled as affordable, but isn't. We have a passion to make a movement to actually do something about that. I got into real estate and probably a bad time. In 2007, I was working for BMW, and I was a master tech, couldn't really advance anymore from where I was. So I started looking for my next move, and I took a Dale Carnegie course just to, learn a little bit more, push myself out of my, current boundaries at that time. And I met a guy that was in real estate, and he was doing the subject to strategy and was pretty successful. And he's like, hey, why don't you just come out? We got a meeting every once in a while. And I went out to that. It ended up being a real estate education pyramid scheme.
Mm-hmm.
Were rampant back then, and I guess they're still around. They're called nouveau riche, or French for the new rich. But I showed up every week to those meetings for months and just watched people. And I eventually found a couple of guys actually doing stuff. And I attached myself to them. I quit my job. I cashed out my 401k. I showed up at their office, and I didn't leave. And essentially just made myself indispensable. And I eventually came to a point where they couldn't do their business without me. And that story gets crazy. So it's just a matter of how far into it you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, I got pushed a lot. One of the partners was ex-Bulgarian mafia, and It kind of ran it like a mafia. Like once you were in, they took care of you. I drove a classic Jag. They paid for a house on property for me. Like I said, it pushed me really hard, pushed me past a lot of boundaries, and I learned a ton. But it ended up coming into like 2009 when all the money had dried up, and they were talking about running with the investors' money to Argentina. So at that point, morality kicked in, and that's not something I could be a part of. So I ended up calling investors and people that they had bought property from, and I was just like, hey, you've got a clause in a contract, you've got a lien on the property. make use of that, make yourself as whole as you can. This thing's going down. And, death threats later, I lost everything. I went bankrupt. I lost everything but my dog and my student loans, and then had to start in 2009.
Wow, man. I hear you. I've been in that exact space probably a couple months after 2010. It was scorched earth for me financially. I didn't have the mafia knocking on my door. But yeah, I can feel you. So then you started basically rebuilding, right? That's all we can do is just go up from there, right? Tell us about that.
So I have this penchant for efficiency, and with those other guys that I was working with, we did fix and flips, and I learned a lot there. Did some storage units, that sort of thing. It was always a value add component, and rebuilding a lot of those things, I learned where all the failure points were, and then I got more comfortable, and I did heavy gut rehabs. So there's a lot more to do. And then I got into ground up construction, and then I got into like development, small scale development. And I really love taking something from like dirt and making something out of it, because the more components of the whole piece that you can control, the more margin that you can make in your overall deal. And so with that penchant for efficiency, I discovered ways to make things a lot more like, you can use premium materials, but still have a process or design around that makes efficient use of them. Because in the construction industry, there's this rampant waste. There's waste everywhere, not just in the sense that they're wasting materials or don't have designs that make efficient use of materials, but when you have a whole bunch of subcontractors that aren't really accountable to anything, you're just asking for it. And if they can get away with the waste, then they will, because it's not really their dime and they don't want to care. So we took a lot of that into account, went to prefab development, and we would get the land ready. And at the same time we're getting the land ready, we would get a house built, and we'd bring that house in and we'd button it up. And the idea is that you can really compress your timelines. So that's another thing. If your holding costs can make or break the deal a lot of the times. So if you can handle a lot more of the process, do dirt up, ground up, and then bring in a house at the same time, you should be able to do something in about 3 or 4 months and have a turnkey product. We ran into every sort of problem possible with our pilot that we did, and I'm glad we went through it. It was hell, but we learned a ton, and it pushed me to end up doing it myself. I was like, shoot, I could just do this so much better if I controlled all these things. Because I still had to GC the thing, and I still had to micromanage those guys, because here's some insight into prefab or modular industry, is that the vast majority of it's controlled by the mobile home industry. So there's a different codex, they're built to a different standard, but the people setting up the homes don't treat them any differently. So they set them up like they're not going to be around in 20 years. So this could be a $500,000, $750,000 home that you're putting up. But if the people putting it together don't do it in a way that is proper, where water gets in a house, it dies. And usually it gets in where you can't see it, and it just starts destroying everything. That's a huge deal. So for me, not just building efficiently means like we can make an affordable product, but it's going to last. So we can build something to last. It's not only affordable up front, but it's affordable down the long run. And what that means is we can have more affordable rents to the end user, because you're not having those capital expenses over and over. And then when you do some maintenance or replace something, it's very easy to do. We use standard size components. There's nothing like custom or crazy like the RV industry or park model homes or something like that. They usually have some sort of custom built-in thing, or something from the RV industry is super expensive. Like their water heaters are like $1,300 for no reason. They're like 6 gallons.
Yeah,
right?
It's crazy. I know, I learned that kind of the hard way. We had picked up a property in South Carolina a couple years ago. It was a 61 space mobile home park, and kind of went into it with the construction background mindset of just like, yeah, let's rehab these things one at a time, go through them, getting in there, realizing everything's a different size. Everything is like very unique, different quality, different materials. And you have to go to like a mobile home, mobile home Depot type of store that only sells these things. And I'm like, I couldn't wrap my head around that. It seems like your like Mod is a hybrid of size and scale of mobile homes, however, quality, workmanship, and general other attributes more aligned with traditional stick-built construction.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're built to exceed standard code, but they're built like tanks. Like, everything's bulletproof. There's just the materials that are used just will last a lifetime. They'll far exceed me, which we build everything around that because eventually we want to self-manage thousands of these. We've got expansion models where we'll be doing high-density multifamily in all of our units, and we'll be one of our biggest customers and cranking out units for our own projects. So we want to minimize those costs and actually have a profitable property management company that doesn't have headaches all the time.
Yeah. Okay. So awesome. Okay. So you're in this space and you're acting, help us understand your role, because from what I'm hearing, it sounds like you kind of got a couple different tentacles. You're actually physically building these. Then you're on one hand, you're selling them to the public, so consumer facing, and then secondarily, you're actually developing some yourself to keep for income producing properties and or developments.
Yeah, we'll get back into development. We've got to get the factory ramped up. But yeah, our clientele is business owners, investors, developers that are buying production runs of our units. We still sell some to the public, but that's, as we get ramped up, we'll cut any of the retail stuff out because they're one-offs and they're not. It's a lot harder to do in a factory sense to do a one-off for us. Because our pricing is wholesale pricing, so we can't do wholesale pricing with doing a custom one-off thing.
Okay, so who's your current avatar as far as who you are marketing to? Who are you trying to reach? Someone who's doing like basically like a mobile home park style property where they've got 10 or 20 spaces they're going to fill in? Or are you looking for, if it's wholesale, it's obviously a volume play for your avatar?
Right. So yeah, boutique hotels is something that's really up and coming right now, and we can go into that in a blueprint. We've got a phenomenal product for camps or for RV parks where we can literally double the occupancy of an RV park. We have a model that is called the Studio Duplex. It's 12 feet wide, 36 feet long. It's got 2 studios in it. So 2 apartments in that one space. And if it's not an RV park, they can literally be stacked next to one another to make a 4-plex, an 8-plex, you name it. It can adapt to the property. So there's some really cool things for that in workforce housing. But then, like I said, boutique hotels, destination spots are really big.
Yeah, and that's so cool because that's really in vogue right now as well. There's a lot of folks that are, boutique hotel is like a new kind of buzzword in the industry. There's a lot of players and there's even syndications now in that. So it's very attractive. And I like that personally because it's the intersection of real estate investing and hospitality, which I think is cool because you can enjoy the benefits of owning real estate and also enjoy the benefits of basically being a small business owner, right? So you've got 2 ways there to generate income.
Well, I'll take it a step further on that.
Okay.
And like if you think about Airbnb, it's not, the idea is not going anywhere, even though it's pretty saturated, right? But that's a residential play. And when you're looking at financing or you're looking at trading these things or you're looking at getting into any of the homes, it's a residential play. When you get into the boutique hotel, it's a commercial play. So your comps aren't whatever house is out there. Your comp is how much revenue can you generate. That's a lot more in your control, right? And in a commercial play, then you can build something, and then you can leverage that a lot quicker with the commercial valuation, and then you can keep building.
That's crazy because when you say that you can bring the studio duplex in, I was looking at it on some of the information you sent me prior. You could literally double. So when you double the number of units you have on a property, theoretically you could, almost double your net operating income at that point, and then right there, based on the way commercial real estate's valued, theoretically you're doubling the value of the asset as well, right? So that's incredible to get that density in there without taking up any more of really a footprint. It's a phenomenal design. It's really cool, man. How is that working for you guys so far?
We've had a lot of good traction on that, and it's been a culmination of a year and a half worth of work, tons of conversations. Like I said, we wanted to have an effect for truly affordable housing. And what we found sounds silly, but like people that need affordable housing can't afford it. And what I mean by that is like they can't afford to do the infrastructure. So when I got out of debt, I scrounged money and got this trash piece of property and built a tiny house on it and clawed my way out of debt. Like that's asking a lot for most people. I'm not going to be able to put all of those things together. And it's not the same place anymore. Like it's hard to get a land loan like I did 15 years ago. So what the aim is here, we make it easy and profitable for the investor, the developer, to set it up, set all that infrastructure up. And because they don't have to have nearly as much into it, they can charge less for rents. And we do it that way. And that way we can do a lot more scale.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So if I have a piece of land here, do you guys participate in is the savings that you offer just by way of time and quality and just getting the product there quicker? Because if we're developing the land and let's say it's entitled already, we still need to bring in utilities and water, sewer, all that stuff. So do you guys have any role in that? Or is that just something that you have a standard that you need to have so that you guys can basically plug in your product when the land is prepared?
We only handle land development on our own deals, but if we partnered on something, then yeah, we would play a hand in that. It's all those things. It's time, but also the studio duplex is $75,000, right? And we've got lifetime products in there. A lot of the siding and the roof is all standing seam metal. Like it's not going anywhere. We'll put red oak hardwood flooring in it. Like it's going to last 100 years. Like you don't have to replace it. You can just refinish it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
The walls, we were using a lot of this, like 3/4 tongue and groove shiplap stuff. The product's inconsistent. So what we've moved to is a hardwood plywood that we can finish to make it look just like drywall, or we can leave, the wood finish on it. That, I mean, it's indestructible. You're not putting a fist through that thing. This product thought through like that. But if you can get 2 doors, for $35,000 a piece, right? Where else are you getting a door for $35,000?
I mean,
so often with your development, right, your land and your utilities in there, you'd be about $50,000 a door if you're doing something that's all coded and through the city. If you're doing something that's out in the country where you don't need all that oversight, you can do a lot less. You don't have to have a proper foundation or anything. You don't have to account for the sidewalks and the 2 parking spaces for everything that the city's going to require from you. So it can be a lot less.
That's amazing. That's like probably the lowest price point that I've ever heard. The only thing you can get for $35,000 to $50,000 is like a shanty in like Cincinnati or something like that. And then you're going to put that into Section 8 service if you're lucky, and you're going to have like a dog with fleas that you've got to continually pour money into. So this is kind of like an industry sea change. It feels like that with the advent of this type of product, it's incredible that you guys are doing this and still having a margin to make it profitable for you. Is the reason for that just because you've developed a system to just maximize efficiency and mitigate waste?
Yeah, a lot of it is, and it's a volume play, right? But yeah, we all of our designs are around maximizing material usage. We want to minimize the labor that's involved. We want to minimize the cuts that are involved. It's not just waste management. It's like if I can take a board and I can use the whole board, like, most construction materials, panels are 4x8. So we build around that. And we do things that are in lengths of 4. Our buildings are 12 feet wide. So we're using, all of those increments that are already there, and we don't have to cut a whole lot. And we've done so much prototyping, and there's things that look good on paper, but when you do them, it's not nearly as great as you thought. And we've done a ton of that, not just with our, our houses, that proper, site-built houses that we did, but in the factory. It's been a grueling 1.5 years just learning all of those things. And then there's like every iteration we get better and better, and it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I bet. That's so cool. It's crazy that it's like not the thought and the idea of the whole thing is like all you're really doing is being very smart and calculated and thoughtful into what you're doing with premium materials. And that I applaud you for that, because the whole industry doesn't do that, So the fact that you guys are really just being, not to like simplify what you're doing at all, because I think it's amazing. It's going to produce results for people financially and providing that like workforce housing, the ability for low income or the hospital. It sounds like it's a tremendous product, man. So I'm excited that we're here talking about it so people can learn about it. Let me ask you this.
If you look at a different dimension, so many people stop at cost. And in the construction world, they'll just look cost of materials. But if you actually look at how things are installed, I can spend twice as much on materials and still be ahead, because they're a joy to install. Because a lot of those cut rate materials, like they're warped, or there's so many little quirks that you've got to work with, right? You just get a good straight piece of material, you pay a little more for it, even if you're paying double for it, right? Like the install process is so much more. Then the final product looks better because you're not having to like make it work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it sounds like that's another a point to what you guys are doing. It sounds like why you're successful, because you're controlling the material, acquisition of the material and the installation. So you've got labor and material. And when you've got that same best practice going into both of those, most of the time you can't control those because the GC will buy the materials or the sub will. And like you said, there's no real big picture. They're there just to like stay in their lane. The plumber, just go cut. And then you see the dumpster full with like enough material to build 2 more houses pretty much. So I can see it because every job that you drive by, when you see those big boxes or dumpsters out there overflowing, that's just money sitting there. And so I can see this is a really tremendous model that you've built.
And even beyond that, like you said, contractors are going to buy a small quantity of whatever they need for that job, right? We're buying large quantities of things so we can get prices bought down. And beyond that, I don't have to go to the warehouse to pick things up. I set an order, I've got price lists, they all know me, and then they send an 18-wheeler truck. That truck's got a forklift on it, and that forklift unloads all the material onto my racks. Like if you go to Home Depot and you see all those lumber racks, I have those here, right? And we don't touch the material until we're using it. So that's a lot of back and forth time that has to get calculated as well into a contractor.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Okay, so if someone was trying to follow in your footsteps and wanted to say, man, he's onto something, man, this is like a genius, and it looks like you're operating in the greater kind of Texas area right now, and hopefully far beyond that in the future. It sounds like you absolutely will be. Tell us about, your map, your blueprint of what you did to get to where you are now, and what steps you took so that someone could essentially follow in your footsteps if they wanted to.
So I'll give you a couple routes. One is we've got an expansion plan in our business model to go nationwide, and we're going to franchise this thing out. So if someone's really interested in doing exactly what I'm doing, come work for me, we'll train you up, and then we'll set you up with a franchise. If I was to start over again in this present time, what I would do is I would go get a piece of land within an hour of a major metropolitan area that's outside the city limits. All right, so you don't have all of the code stuff or property restrictions. You want something that's near a body of water, near a state park. It's got some other local attraction that's fun, or you could even set up like a petting zoo. It doesn't really matter. It just has to be some sort of destination thing. And I would start setting up a boutique hotel. You can base all of your utilities off of RVs, and then you can either have RV spots because those are cheap to set up, or you could set up modular units like we've got, and then just stack them and build as you can. The main thing is getting a piece of property and getting something that can cash flow in there. But this model, if you can get 4 or 5 of these units up and running, you can literally go from like the raw land to making money in 4 months. You might not do that on your first one, right? But it's one of those things that, and like I was saying earlier, now you're in a commercial valuation. So if you're phenomenal at marketing, or you've got a cool destination thing, like you can really make a ton of money. Like the studio duplex is a couple hundred square feet. It's the equivalent square footage of 2 30-foot RVs, right? It's just laid out better. But if you're renting out an RV, what are you renting that out for at like an RV park? Like maybe $500-600 a month or something like that, plus utilities. But if you've got a destination place, you could be $200-300 a day or a night, right? In like if you can get your occupancy up, which is in your control, it's more in your control than a residential comp and having to be on Airbnb and compete against thousands of other things that don't have any other draw, right? That's what I would do. And then I would just keep leveraging that same asset to either get more assets or build that one out bigger.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's such a cool, creative thing to do. With, like you said, Airbnb, I think, is saturated for sure, but it's a unique marketplace because there's still room for it to grow, but there's so many players in there. So it's just forcing, sometimes it's like a race to the bottom as far as pricing, but on the other end of that spectrum, it's also kind of a race to the top as far as who can provide the best hospitality, who can provide the coolest experience, who can have the coolest amenities. So people are pushing them, 2 different directions. So having something cool, unique like this is cool, man. I dig it.
That's absolutely the play with the Airbnb. Well, anything in hospitality is there's got to be a draw. So you don't want to ever be in the race to the bottom. And you can absolutely play. And I know guys that do a phenomenal job of it, of having high-end stuff, or they have the draw, or they put in the plunge pool, or all these other amenities. But if you're doing that on a one-off basis, that gets really expensive, and your timeline for profitability goes way out. If you can do one property and do all those improvements once to get people to come there, right, then every other lodging that you add to it is immediately profitable. You're not having to add $100,000 upgrades to like a pool and, all those things every single time like you would in a residential play.
Yeah, you're right. It's like a little more of an evergreen model where you set the basis for these amenities and then you just stack units around them. They all get to enjoy the benefit, and it keeps continuing to feed until you hit a point where you just need to expand even further and add a second pool or a second wellness center or something like that. But still, yeah, it's a great
But then
point.
You're rolling in so much money, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's good problems to have at that point. So that's awesome, man. You're inspiring me a little bit. I have 3 tiny homes on a property we have out on the outskirts of town, and they're all kind of like they're really nice. But after I was looking at some of the studio duplex, I was, my wheels are turning. I'm like, well, that's 3. That could be 6 pretty quickly if we, did this, and this. So you may have a customer in me after we talk offline. Tell me about some of your goals for this next year with the company, what you're planning to do. Sounds like expansion is definitely on your horizon, franchising nationwide. Tell us about where you are now and where you plan to go. We can hold you accountable to that next time we talk and commend you for hitting your goals.
So we are ramping up this year, and one of my goals is to have my first $1 million month. And that's a little under capacity, but that's only, selling 10, 12 units, depending on how big they are. And we're also working on getting our modular certification, which is what we're going to be needing to build high-density multifamily projects. So essentially, everything's done in-house. It's super compatible. We can place them anywhere in the country without any real oversight. That's kind of an expensive process, but we've done all of the upfront legwork for it. Now it's just a matter of, going through the process. We've already got the architecture firm involved that's going to be doing a lot of the documentation for us. The reason it's complicated is because if you look at your house plans for a typical house, they may be a dozen pages or something. If you look for modular plans, literally 10 times the documentation that goes into it. Just because they're built off-site and we have all of our own inspections, like there's a third-party inspector, but everything has to be laid out so that essentially a layperson that's not skilled in any manner could look at Lego instructions and build this thing.
Yeah, so I could see that as a big challenge, though, because you have to basically be able to be approved, like from a zoning or a inspection perspective in every municipality in the country, right? So how do you get a blanket
It's state by state
like that? Okay,
and Texas is one of the hardest. So we've got Texas, and it's essentially really all we have to do for any other state is get an engineering stamp for that state.
Okay, mostly like what wind ratings and
we're already like down. We already have like hurricane ratings anyway. They'll just look at the plans, be like, okay, we stamp it, charge us $100, whatever, and like, once we get Texas under our belt, it's no problem.
Yeah, dude, because Texas you get the floods, you get the hurricanes, you get the tornadoes. So it's like you get every disaster you could think of. So if you could get approved there, then it's cake everywhere else.
Yeah, so the big thing here with the certification is these go for legally indistinguishable from site-built construction. So as far as anything else is concerned, and it may work or not for depending on what your plan is, but we have to be as conforming as possible for big projects, and that's where we're at. That's where we're going to have the most effect. If you're doing a project like we were talking about, a boutique hotel, that doesn't matter to you. But if you're doing something that's residential, because we'll eventually get into our own residential developments too, we want them to be legally indistinguishable from site-built homes, because then they comp against all the other houses that are out there, right? There's no question about it. So the residential homes are going to be, the bigger homes are less profitable for us, so we need to ramp up and do all the smaller stuff first. But we want to be getting into neighborhoods where we can get an entry-level home on property for about $150,000 for something that's like 1,300 square feet.
That's amazing, dude.
And will last 100 years, right? It's like those are all the things we're working towards.
Yeah, I just think that's a goal that like is so, we have I think we need like 750,000 units in our marketplace now to fulfill the need, just based on the projected growth that we have. And it's like the median home price here is just under $400,000. If you were to buy anything in that price point, if you could find it, D.R. Horton built it, and you're gonna have a nightmare on your hands.
D.R. horrible.
Yeah, within like 6 to 12 months, you're gonna have issues. So bringing this product to market, man, is like it's gonna be very profitable, but it's also noble, I think, because you guys have the ability to provide, to fill like a massive need in a lot of markets, I'd imagine.
Here's my thing. I'll give you a glimpse into my story, right? My wife and I just led a kind of normal suburban life, and I started looking at like where we were financially, and I just didn't see an exit where like anything got better. I was running the numbers, did spreadsheets, tried all the payoff stuff, and it didn't make sense. Like we had quite a bit in student loans. We had our house payment, which we thought was going to be making us money or gaining equity, and one modest car payment, like nothing crazy. And there was no upside in the horizon. So I was just looking at whatever it is that I could do to change that, to give us a better trajectory. And what it came down to is we needed to minimize our housing costs. That was the biggest expense that we had. And if I could have an effect on that, then I could make a change. So we ended up borrowing money from friends, buying the most trashed piece of property we could find out in the country and building a tiny house on it. And then spent 3 years getting out of debt. We're about $350,000 negative. We lost money on the house that we sold because it was falling apart at 4 years old, but they sold the back half of the property to an even cheaper builder. So we lost equity there. A few years, we clawed our way out of debt. We were able to reduce our housing expenses by 80%.
That's amazing.
And then once we our net worth was zero. At 2017, my net worth hit zero. A few years later, we were millionaires. That burden was released on us. So my biggest thing is, what can I do for people to have a similar effect, right? And I'm not probably going to know most of these people. And then what's the scale? How many people do I have to have? Is it 1 in 1,000 that is going to have a change and be the next big thing and have a huge life improvement for society because they were able to have a burden taken off of them and they were able to think about something other than just surviving? I think that's huge, and that keeps me motivated every day to go through all this.
That's great. I mean, honestly, man, you could just changing one person's life is a tremendous accomplishment, and the fact that you guys are doing it at scale is awesome. It seems like most people that are in the real estate space are always thinking about how we can get bigger, better, faster, make more money. And I just think it's awesome that you have that mindset, obviously, but based on a drive to help people, really. And the fact that you've been there and you have proof of concept just through your own experience gives it so much credence that it's something that I could see a lot of people wanting to get behind and support. So hats off to you.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, how about this? So we're both, we talked offline a minute ago, both members of this tribe of millionaires now, GoBundance, which has been a great experience for me, and you've been with them for quite a while. Tell me about your kind of philosophy and the importance of joining a community like that, or hiring a coach, or just surrounding yourself with people who are going where you want to go.
Yeah. So first and foremost, the best investment you can ever make is in yourself. That's going to compound and pay dividends for life, right? That it can't be taken away from you. You can go bankrupt. That's not going to go away. And everybody thinks about money first, and that's a driver. Money's the only thing it is a multiplier. So I would suggest doing everything you can to get your mind right, to get your head right, heal childhood traumas that we all have. Because if you don't love yourself and your life where you're at now, you're not going to love it in the future. It doesn't matter how much money you've made. I've seen guys that have made vast sums of money, and that's the only area of their life that they worked on, and they're miserable cunts. Yeah. And it's only going to make you worse. Money is only a magnifier. So work on yourself first. I would say that first, and a good group can help you with that as well. Like you can bounce things off of one another. You can realize that there's people going through some of the same things you are. We beat ourselves up a lot internally. We can be our greatest limiting factor, but just knowing that somebody else is having a hard time with something and being able to relate on that. I can't tell you how many guys I've talked to where it's like, I thought I was struggling on this alone. I thought I was freaking idiot because I lost money on whatever it was. Right. And at the end of the day, like I got 3 things that make a successful day. I work towards my mission in life. I do that with integrity, and I make it home alive. Like if I've done those 3 things, it's a good day, right?
It's a good day. Yeah.
Because there's so many things that can beat you up along the way, and you can only do so much yourself. And that's why I came into GoBundance and into other groups. Is I was that lone wolf, and I did things by sheer force of will, and I got some things done, but it was miserable to just do it that way. And my advice beyond that would be just to know the destination of where you want to be and let go of the how it's going to happen. Like you're going to work towards what you're doing every single day, but don't try and control that as much, because you're going to bump into somebody and they're going to change your world. And just by saying a sentence that you didn't even think of before. And if you're open to that, you can see that, and then you can just you can bob and weave and pivot and do so much more than you ever could just trying to make it happen the one way that you thought it was going to happen.
That's so powerful, man. You're right. Everyone is just one relationship or one person or, one statement or book or one thing like that away from a major pivot if you're open-minded enough to recognize it and take action on it. And I think that's been probably my biggest takeaway from the group has just been surrounding myself with guys who you can have these conversations with about some of the struggles, seeing that you're not, like you said, you're not the only one. It's not the kind of thing that you might bring up at like a dinner with the family or like in your regular group of friends, because they might not have any perspective, or they would still want to be there to support you, but they might not understand what it's like to kind of have the burden of running the factory and having all this inventory sitting online and trying to get it sold, and just the kind of problems and challenges that we face as entrepreneurs. So it's important, I think, to surround yourself with people who have been there or are going through it with you. You can that bond of going through it together is really strong, and there's a lot of value to that. So I think we're aligned in that respect.
And you said it earlier too, accountability, because when you're any sort of modicum of successful, you've got so many more people trying to drag you down than pull you up. And the biggest thing that made the move for me was an old timer came up to me and literally poked me in the chest and called me out for swinging a hammer. He's like, that's not your highest and best use. You don't need to be doing that. You need to be leading other people to be doing this. And you could have such a much bigger reach in what you're doing. But just having somebody that's at your level that they're not going to be mean about it necessarily, but they'll hold you accountable to what you say you want to do. And sometimes we need that.
Yeah, 100%. If you cast that vision, there's nothing wrong with someone holding you radically accountable to that, because you're the one who cast it. And so sometimes you just have to get out of your own head and say, this guy's not being a jerk or a prick. He's just pushing me the way I asked to be pushed. And sometimes it's uncomfortable, but that's where the growth is in discomfort. So what books and podcasts are you listening to along the way, or where do you find sources of education in your journey?
I may have a different take on this than most people. I think about it in terms of what lights me up, because motivation, inspiration, drive is a finite resource, and we've only got so much of it in a day or a week. So if there's something that's dragging you down, cut it out of your life. If something's too hard to read or too hard to listen to or whatever, just cut it out of your life or come back to it at a later time. Mm-hmm. I don't care what it is, if it's fiction, nonfiction, hentai, whatever, dude. If it lights up your world and gets you motivated, hell yeah. Like this podcast, whatever it is, if there's something that just lights you up and gets you motivated to do something, follow that. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is the action that you take. You'll learn orders of magnitude exponentially faster by doing something than you ever will taking something in secondhand. Secondhand can give you motivation, and grab onto that. But whatever it is, if it's draining you, just don't go with that. Do the things that light you up. And I do have a shameless plug for a book. If you want one that gives you all the feels, right? Because that's good. Like, you can go through all of those range of motion. My wife wrote I Call Bullshit, and it's a memoir going through her life, which sounds like a boring thing, right? But it's one of those books that is so well written you can't put it down, and it makes you feel like the complete range of emotion.
I love it.
It's a story of struggle and betrayal and then coming through all of those things, and it's kind of universally accepted. Doesn't matter like what walk of life you come through, you've been through some sort of thing that can speak to that.
Yeah, that's it, man. I love it. Thank you for sharing that with us. We'll put that in the show notes and check that out, and hopefully some of our listeners can buy that and support you guys. So wrapping up, a couple of final questions here. Are you doing any kind of coaching or consulting, or you have an incredible story, man, kind of from rags to riches, and they say you're best suited to serve the person that you used to be. Are you sharing this with other people, or are you just kind of have your head down and this is in your gift to society is through ModMod?
I don't have any formal coaching, but I'm happy to consult on things. I would say that my avatar would be anyone that was told that they're crazy for thinking so big or wanting to solve such big problems. I would say don't get discouraged on that, because at the end of the day, if you're driven to do it, you're pulled towards that, then you obviously have the gumption to go through it, right? And people talking to you in that regard, remember that they're a mirror of their own limitations. Anybody that's going to drag you down is doing so because they're fearful of what you're doing or what you want to do. Anybody that you perceive that's ahead of you in the journey of life, they're never going to shit on you for hustling to catch up to that point.
That's powerful, man. Yeah, I know they say competition happens at the bottom and collaboration happens at the top. And the people that want to, you got to surround yourself with people that want to see you succeed, because a lot of people want you to succeed just enough, but they don't want you to exceed them. So, and as soon as you cross that threshold, then they want to try and pull you back. So that's really good advice, man. I appreciate that. So tell us how we can support you and how my audience can connect with you. If they want to learn more about ModMod, and I'm sure we'll be seeing it everywhere at a certain point, but it's a really exciting endeavor, man. I'm really stoked for you. Tell us how we can support you and what we can do for you.
Yeah, website's modular.com, and to reach out on there. I'm happy to walk through these, like what we've been through, how to set up a site, that sort of thing. Like we've done a lot of that ourselves, and I'm happy for anybody that's up and coming and wants to start figuring those things out, to have a conversation about it.
That's great, man. Awesome. Well, Darren, I can't thank you enough for your time today. I hope our audience will check you guys out, modular.com. And folks, thanks for tuning in. This has been the Build Better Blueprint, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers.
That's it, folks. That's our show. Thanks as always for listening. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please leave us a 5-star rating and subscribe to our channel so you are up to date with the latest episodes. Feel free to share with your friends and keep up the great work. You are on the right path. See you at the top.